Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let me get my hat on, and let's get to that first question. Alright. Does your diet affect your mood/mental well-being? It should not, but tempted to think it could. Of course your diet affects your mood and your mental well-being. What people need to understand, your mood, your psychology, whether it's healthy or otherwise, your energy, your mood, whether you're depressed, happy, all that stuff, that involves chemistry in your brain. You don't think nutrition affects that? Of course it affects it. It's been studied over the years, and we know that various nutrient deficiencies can cause depression. They can cause depression, they can cause low energy, everything else. So your diet affects things like your blood sugar, your insulin sensitivity. That absolutely affects mood, energy, happiness, everything else. We know that dopamine in the brain can be affected by our food. Dopamine affects a tremendous amount of emotions. So when you look at all this from this perspective, and you look at the fact that even caloric intake can affect these things. Sometimes too many calories can make you lethargic. It can make you tired. Well, that affects your mood. That affects your well-being. Eating way too few calories can do what? It can make a person irritable. It can make them grumpy. All right, these are well understood things. And again, nutrient deficiency, poor quality diets, all this stuff can absolutely affect your emotions. It can absolutely affect your emotions. It can affect your energy, everything else. Of course it affects it. Your brain is affected by all the chemistry in your body. So the idea that diet shouldn't affect this stuff, of course it does. Of course it does. And people who are on a healthy, balanced diet are more likely to have a healthier mind as a result of it. And it doesn't mean that everyone who's on a healthy diet will. In fact, there's a lot of correlations that show that a lot of people who have various mental illnesses and issues or depression do try different types of diets that are healthier than what they have been doing in hopes of reversing it. And it doesn't always work. And so that can affect correlational data. But outside of that, of course it affects your mood. Why wouldn't it? You're still dealing with chemistry in your body, and your brain is part of your body. And your brain and your emotions are all chemical based, all neurotransmitter based, or even blood sugar based to some extent. Some of them are. So no, it makes perfect sense that it is. And if you want a healthy mind, having a healthy body goes hand in hand with it. And your nutrition absolutely affects that in a very meaningful way. All right, next question. Do you need to add weight/reps on your chin-ups and dips while in a bulk? Or is it enough to just maintain reps and sets while increasing your body weight? Thanks. Not enough info to answer that, but here's the thing. It depends on how advanced you are, and it depends on how fast you're gaining weight. Now, someone who's a novice lifter gains strength and muscle very, very quickly. If in your first year of serious training, even if you're bulking, even if you're gaining a couple pounds every month, do you really think novices gain strength so slow that 2 pounds a month added to an exercise is enough? Of course not. Novice lifters should be increasing their chin-up and dip reps and even weight every single month, even if they are bulking and gaining 2 pounds a month. Now, if you're a more advanced lifter, maybe not. It might not be the case, but a lot of it depends on your relative strength, how strong you are, how long you've been training, and how fast you're gaining weight. But at the end of the day, calculate it this way. If you have an idea of how much you're trying to progress on all your lifts, you're running formulas, you're running programs, right? You have it programmed in that you're going to add X amount of percentage or X amount of weight or whatever to each exercise. If you're tracking your weight on a bulk, count the weight that you gain towards that. So if you know that you're supposed to be adding 5 pounds to each exercise every month or every 3 weeks, and you're gaining 2 pounds a month due to bulking, you know that you need to add additional weight to compensate for that, or reps to compensate, because oftentimes we'll be doing reps instead of adding weight in different phases. But the truth be told, a pound or two of extra weight on an exercise every month isn't that significant in the grand scheme of things. It matters. It does matter, and it does add up. And if your body weight is changing, that will very much affect those exercises. But don't you think it affects your squats also? That would almost be like saying, do you need to add as much weight to the squat when you're bulking because your body weight's going up, you're lifting more weight with it. It moves. It's the same thing. The squat is a weighted body weight exercise. Just like a chin-up or a dip, but the legs are the things moving. but it's still a full body weight exercise. Squat your body and tell me that's not a body weight exercise. It's lifting the whole weight of your thigh. Everything between your knee to the top of your head is being moved as part of the weight in a squat. We still add weight to the squat when we bolt. And the only difference is that a squat, we tend to be able to lift more total weight than on a chin-up or a dip. So that throws it off a little bit, but it's the same basic idea. All right, next question. What is the best way to induce muscle growth? Upper, lower 2 times a week with more volume, or full body 3 times a week with less volume? In other words, what's more important, frequency high or volume high? Thanks. Man, this gets into a tricky one because we are talking about something that is very, very difficult to measure. For the novice lifter, definitely the frequency is going to win out every time. Training each muscle 3 times a week versus twice, hands down, novice lifter is going to gain more muscle doing that. As we start getting intermediate up, that's where some people go to these splits, because ultimately it's a case of getting more workload in per workout. So they tend to either focus on certain exercises more in each workout, along with accessories. I mean, and even a 4-day a week could still be full body with a focus on any given exercise. Maybe it's a deadlift focused day, maybe it's an overhead focused day. Doesn't mean it doesn't have to be full body. But the thing is, when we're talking about gaining muscle there, we know that total volume, and volume includes the weight on the bar. Volume should be, really look at it in terms of tonnage on the different exercises. Volume isn't just I did 3 sets of 10 versus 5 sets of 10 versus 2 sets of 8. That's not volume. Volume includes the tonnages and the numbers and the weight on the bar also. That is part of volume. It's more than just sets and reps. So a lot of people are like, well, I do high volume training, and you look and they're doing tons of little fluff with only 1 or 2 serious exercises. That's not necessarily as high a volume as they think it is. It might be a lot of sets, might be a lot of reps, but it might not be that high a volume when they're throwing around a lot of little fluff exercises and counting it. Because not that many muscles are being worked. Not that much work is being done. Volume is also about workload. So the issue we get into there, we know that weekly volume is one of the most important factors in muscle growth, but frequency does matter. What have we seen even with the Norwegian study? That more advanced lifters gain more muscle when volume is equal when they split it up into higher frequency. When they train 6 days a week with the same volume versus 3, they gained more muscle, measurably more muscle, using the exact same volume. The problem we have is that when we start changing these 2 different variables, it gets very, very difficult to say, because when you're talking about an upper lower, but you're training 4 days a week versus 3, a lot of that upper lower is overlapping. I mean, if you're doing deadlifts, squats, push presses in your upper lower days, you're still doing a lot of full body exercises. So you might be thinking you're doing an upper lower split, but if it's not all isolation, you might not be. So you might actually be doing more total volume, but with a higher frequency on a lot of your body parts. A lot of your body parts are getting a higher frequency on that. So in that case, you're getting actually some of them 4 days a week instead of 3 with more volume. So I'm going to say, depending upon your exercise selection and how big of a volume gap we have here, the upper lower might produce more growth for some people. But it's because, like you said, you're doing more total volume. Weekly volume absolutely matters for muscle growth, just like frequency absolutely matters. They both are very important factors, extremely important. But in the case of the upper lower, if you're doing a lot of full body exercises with the more volume and counting them as upper lower, I mean, what do you count the deadlift as, an upper or lower exercise? What do you count the push press as? What do you count the strict standing press as? That's a full body exercise. All of those are. What do you count them as? If all of that sort of stuff is in your upper lower, you might actually be doing pretty much a full body 4 days a week. So it gets tricky and hard to say. But if that's the case, and you definitely are doing more weekly volume, I'm going to lean in the direction of your upper lower. Why wouldn't we? All right, next question. Jay Bird, do you think there's a coincidence with people who take lots of gear and GI disorders? Many powerlifters have severe gastrointestinal issues like Clint Dardin, Brian Schwab, John Meadows, and now Casey Williams has lost almost 80 pounds in a month. Is there a correlation? I honestly don't know, because here's the thing. I know people who have gastrointestinal problems that started before they got into powerlifting. I mean, I've met multiple powerlifters who had celiac disease. I used to compete with a guy who had celiac disease. He was down to like 100 pounds, and then he was competing at like 250 after several years of powerlifting. Now, he did compete untested, didn't use gear, but by that same token, I've also met a guy who had Crohn's disease. Again, another powerlifter I met had Crohn's disease, competed, drug tested and everything. So it gets hard to say. You do see these gastrointestinal disorders. And you know what? People with gastrointestinal disorders are a percentage of the population. Now, we happen to get a few serious lifters who have them, but it's not that many. It's a handful. Is that indicative of it being at a similar percentage to the general population? Maybe. It could be. I don't know. We don't have enough data to say that. But as far as factors go, could certain drugs influence it? Yeah, maybe they could. Maybe they could, particularly some of the oral antibiotics. But could people's diets affect it also? Some of these diseases could be impacted by the amount of food they eat. I mean, most of these guys are really big guys who eat a lot of food, right? They eat a lot of food. How do we know that the amount of food that they're eating isn't also affecting some of these gastrointestinal disorders just as much as drugs? So the truth is, we don't really know. We need more research done. We need some studies on this before we can honestly say, hey, this is a factor. And you know what? There might not even be a correlation at all. We just simply don't know till it gets studied further. There's some actual data on it. And to my knowledge, we don't have any research looking at the correlation between the general population and serious lifters as far as gastrointestinal disorders. Because you see a few and you say, okay, there's a few there, but there's plenty of people out there who have these same disorders who don't lift weights, don't do steroids, don't overeat, nothing. So without further data, we just can't say. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.